Buongiorno.
Good morning again. We will start again, we go on with the first session of this first Turin Islamic Economic Forum. The aim of this first session is define generic coordinate, introducing all the different subject matters that will be detailed during the next 3 days. So I would like to see the presentation now, thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much. So this was supposed to see the general introduction to be made by CEO and Managing Director of Dinard Standard, Raf Dinjiok, who unluckily last Friday was obliged to go to the United States because of a tragic event in his family in Dubai. So I am replacing him. So the state of the Islamic economy, what does this word represent? Turin Islamic Economic Forum is a very composite word which deals with culture, mentality, and languages which are different, which, however, represent a single lifestyle whole, let's say. You see three macro environments, let's say. The Turin Islamic Economic Forum deals with the center one, that is to say, the application of these rules onto the different sector of the economy. You see services, but you also see food, you also see house financing, fashion, education, also B2B infrastructure. So this is what TIEF has been dealing with for the past 5 editions. So these core subjects do refer to the way of life, fil rouge, let's say, which has been identified with a few peculiarities which have been highlighted. And you see spirituality, education, God consciousness, and the rest, which, however, do impact the values of a Western traditional ecosystem. We are talking about justice, equity, food that must be of a specific kind, wholesome, family, values, charitable activities. The third, the ONG, GNO, the so-called third sector. So this is what I've sort of enclose all the different subject matters referred to, also implicitly, by the term Islamic economy. Which are the drivers of the Islamic economy? We have the consumers, we have activities, that is businesses, governments, and investors. So you have a breakdown of the consumers. We have 2.2 billion in the world population that is becoming more and more affluent, particularly in the Western world and in Europe. Apart from the Gulf area, so this world is becoming more and more digitally connected, and it is working a lot on new tools, and it is very ethical world. It is it cares about how consumption is being carried out, and this is a very important opportunity for the business that has immediately taken over these subjects. And here we have in this sector all the different corporations in the world which have developed specific sectors dedicated to this ecosystem. Governments are also opening operating in lands inhabited by the Islamic population, and then Islamic inhabited land, and also we're talking also Luxembourg, Irish, British, United States governments, and so on and so forth. And then we have also investors. We have the Gulf funds, and also we have also Norway investing in this world. We are talking about $1,000 billion in this case. So we have the general picture. And in the previous slide, and we go on to the different main actors operating in this environment. Within these two slides, all the Turin Islamic Economic Forum subject matters have been developing in the past years. So, if you can show me the slide with the key players, we have the main countries listed here by sector. So, of course, we have the Islamic finance countries. In the fashion world, for example, model fashion, Italy, model fashion ranks 6 now, but in the 3-4 years ago, it would come second. Talking about Great Britain, we have United Kingdom's 8 in media and recreation, and then we have Brazil and Australia, which are top in the production of halal meat. And you can see that this world is indeed impacting different directions. The previous slides have shown you the impact on social economy. Here you see also their impact on production. And now I would like to show you one-to-one, let's say, each single sector, breaking down the sectors. So, talking about the value of Islamic finance in the world, we are talking about $3,000 billion. And you have a breakdown by sector, you have a sukuks and the common investment funds, you have TACA, full insurance, insurance, all the conventional, let's say, economy sections. What does this huge amount of dollars account for with respect to the world? Now, in the world, there are 120 trillion financial assets. So we are talking of a ratio of 3 to 120. We are still talking about a niche, but we are still talking about billions and billions of dollars, which has a growth rate coming up to 25% a year, vis-à-vis the 3% annual growth of the so-called traditional assets. And this world to be developed needs a number of actors, which are listed in a row at the bottom of the slide. Then we need the governance and scholars, specialists, let's say. It needs those that are called Comitato Etico in the ethical banking in Italy, those that carry out ethical screening, not financial screening. So you see the number of the scholars in the world, what they do, the rules, their impact, the number of governments that are dealing with these structures, these governance structures, which are extremely important. You know that governance nowadays has become a sort of keyword for all the financial structures that have an eye, let's say, for environmental and social policies, let's say, and social policies. Another important sector is universities. We have here the number, more or less, of faculties in the world, universities in the world dealing with these subject matters, the kind of education they supply, masters, MBAs, PhDs, and you have a lot of detailed information on the slide. For the many years, Italy has been developing PhDs and MBA nowadays, some masters, Turin, we know, has this beautiful initiative and is at the forefront. And Italy basically always in Italy, it is very important to have now people who get a degree in Islamic economic sciences. Turin is also a school for Islamic and Oriental studies that goes back to the mid-19th century and that has now expanded to the finance sector as well. And again, another important sector, basic fundamental sector, is communication. You have here the number of events of Islamic economic and finance developing over the years, seminars, workshops, the way where they are held, how they're held. You have ethical committees, university, communication. For example, Turin Islamic Economic Forum should be part of this slide with its initiatives. And then we have also this huge corporate social responsibility sector, which represents the connection of Islamic finance and ethical finance and also trade finance with due differences, because this is one of the key words now which are involved in all financial reports of different companies that nowadays also publish this kind of social reports. You have also Charity, Zakat, and Card al-Hassan on the third line, because these are peculiar to the Islamic finance funds that by definition funds that by definition must be given to the community by those who have income and produce income. This is by law, and this creates huge financial pools available to the society. This is one of the characteristics which is not present in nowadays traditional finance. And if we think also from a historical perspective, we can think of the decima, the 10th part of Christianity in the past. And now we go back to the financial activities and the almost 3 trillions I was talking about. I'm going back to this data to show you the different sector. Banking, sukuk, comes from sak, that comes Arabic word that comes from which also check is derived. Many finance words, terminology, a lot of terminology used in finance comes from the Arabic language. So you see the development of also talking about sukuk issues they are also important in the Western world. We are talking about also London and Dublin in Ireland. There has been also sovereign sukuks of the government which impact the public debt issued by Great Britain, for example, by the UK. One was issued by Luxembourg. Italy has never issued a sovereign sukuk, but has taken part in guaranteeing sukuks issued by the United States. And we're talking of very large amounts of money. So they may not be part of the news, but there is participation in this world. Also, Unicredit or Banca Intesa, our reference banking institutions, have been involved as underwriters for a number of sukuk issues through London and Istanbul offices. And then we have also the funds, mutual funds, investment funds. Also in Europe, the most important exchange is Luxembourg. And one of the most important sukuk investment funds is Italian, managed by an Italian SGR through Istanbul and now through its Dubai office. Again, I mean, this world, I would like to highlight this fact, all these words are interconnected, and then we have insurance. Could you please go back to the presentation? Could you please show the slide again? Thank you.
Quindi torniamo adesso appunto ai fondi di investimento.
So we go back to investment funds of all difficult categories, higher, lower risk, and they are sold everywhere, also in Italy. Their feature is that the investment fund feature is that the retail investor, can invest a very small amount of money, 1,000 euros, for example, in very important operations. So Islamic finance is not only hyper-rich people finance, but it is accessible to everybody nowadays. This is the word of bonds, let's say. The sukuks I was describing beforehand, all the different strange words you can read are the different modes of financing. So one of the characteristics of the Islamic finance is that interest rates are vetoed, so there is a financial activity, there is an investment activity, there is indeed a recommended the activity of developing economic activity, but without interest rates. So there are a lot of systems which are not being dealt today with, but they exist. And then we have the insurance world, which is small and a minority, let's say, in size, but very important because of Islamic finance transaction can be guaranteed or insured, let's say, only through insurance protocols, which must be Sharia compliant, and they are called takaful. So this is the word of Islamic, finance. It's a very generic overview, let's say. In the next few minutes, I would like to talk about the real economy, the everyday economy world. So we have the food and drink world. And here you see a lot of numbers and figures and graphs and cakes. And what I would like to show you is that around about 20% of transactions worldwide of what they are called food and beverage, that is to say, the food and beverage world, fall within this world. We are talking one out of five, a huge world worth trillions of dollars. You can see the figures here. And it's extremely important. Of course, for the producing countries, manufacturing countries, look at Australia and Brazil, ranking first and second when we talk about halal meat producers, and they are not part of the Islam inhabited land, but they are also, this is also important also for distribution and production companies in Europe. In Europe, I'm thinking of the French and British example, let's say. Esselunga, for example, has halal sectors. In Italy, we have 2 or 3 certification centers certifying halal productions, which are indeed very active, and we have, I think, 300 or 400 producers which are halal certified with very important high-ranking level companies, and they sell halal products, even though sometimes this is not highlighted on the label, but they are certified. So this halal word thanks to integration and of the Muslim company in Italy, is also a business opportunity now, as you can see, and an investor opportunity of very high importance.
That was as far as the food world is concerned. Then we have the travel world. That's extremely important. That's also very important. So considering all the related supply chains, so TIEF has always dealt with the Muslim-friendly travel and halal travel. And I would like to get your attention on the percentages, which is between 12 and 15% of the general transactions having to do with tourism around the world. And this has to do with the halal world. So these figures are extremely interesting and important. And in fact, practically all suppliers of tourist packages do offer this possibility, that is including all offers for Muslim travelers in the countries where they travel to. We will be talking about this in the last session of the day, the one having to do with the Italian Islamic cultural heritage. And we'll see, in particular, the case of Sicily, that is trying to connect the Islamic local cultural heritage with halal-friendly packages for tourism. I am persuaded that this is an extraordinary occasion for Italy. As I tried to say earlier, we are the only Italian country having this huge heritage, and it is unexploited in Europe. So we've seen the halal world as far as food is concerned, we've seen tourism, and that's another world that is exploding, that is growing very importantly, the so-called modest fashion, with smaller percentages, but we're always talking about 10% of transactions. So since we're talking about $1 billion in total, here we're talking about $500,000 US dollars per year of transactions having to do with this world, as travel, as tourism and food. So these are protocols that are very well known. We have already mentioned these in the past editions of the Turin Islamic Economic Forum. That represents a huge economic opportunity for investors, for investments. And I will underline this once again, that Italy is among the first producers in the world of modest fashion. We have then pharmaceuticals. This is extremely important. So TIEF this year, for the first time, will have 2 sessions devoted to health and care protocols, and percentages are around 10% of the total world amount. Here we do have protocols in vaccines, in drugs that are extremely sophisticated and delicate. And so, in fact, there is a pharmaceutical industry that is very specific to the Islamic world for these specific consumers. Italy, even when not so evident, Italy is developing protocols for this. And so we're talking about 1 million that is addressed to 2 billion people, people willing to use vaccines and pharmaceuticals that are Sharia compliant. Another interesting sector that is really booming in Italy, in the world, and in particular in Italy, I don't know why the magazines and newspapers are not talking about these. It is related also to the healthcare, but it's cosmetics. Islamic cosmetics is becoming extremely popular, not only among the Muslims who do have specific products and do not wish to have certain products that are not halal compliant, not Sharia compliant, but also used by non-Muslims, men and women, because these products are considered much healthier and more effective, also greener, so as to use this term, compared to the so-called conventional products. And so this market is growing at a rapid pace. So these products are produced for third parties, developed in Italy. So we have the so-called white labeling, produced in Italy and then sold in the Gulf countries with a different trademark. So that's a wonderful business opportunity to take into account and really to keep an eye on these products. I believe that TIEF is going to organize a smaller convention on cosmetics because this sector is really becoming dramatically important all over the world. One of the last pages, so it's about media and recreation entertainment. We will devote a specific session of TIEF, a smaller TIEF, probably not a 3-day event, but the specific TIEF on the production of films and entertainment industry. In Italy, this is not very well known, but the Anglo-Saxon and the French-speaking countries have more experience in these due to their colonial past, but these series are becoming very important. They are involving over 1 billion viewers. Sometimes I have a look at them. I have to say they are extraordinary quality series, and also an intellectual and social, psychological and spiritual quality that is much more interesting than many series that are not so high quality, the ones coming from the US, for example. So I will say there will be a TIEF devoted to cosmetics and another one devoted to media and recreation. You see here percentages are smaller, but 5% of the world trade in this sector is made of this type of production. So that was the last slide that I wanted to present to you. And I hope I was able to provide you with a general overview. If you have questions, I am still available and I will try to answer. Thanks a lot, Alberto. And I will get the opportunity to voice a question coming from the chat. We have presented a very interesting scenario, rich of opportunities for our businesses. Why don't we talk about this? The media do not talk about these figures, do not tell about these opportunities. And this would be important to understand the potential market. Well, I did not expect this kind of question from a friend. Well, this question does not come from me, but comes from the chat. Well, this question was asked in the chat, yes. I can say on average Italians are quite provincial. They tend not to move away too much. Here we're talking about Islamic finance and culture. They do not go off the beaten path. So if I see how these themes are covered by the US media, for example, or by the German press, I'm thinking also about the Spanish media, there is a huge gap. I cannot say what the reasons are behind this kind of attitude, but certainly we acknowledge an information gap in Italy over these themes. For instance, if just to mention a neutral topic, which is the one of the Islamic cultural heritage. And as I said, it is unique in Europe. We never mention that. We know that there are a couple of stones thrown around Sicily that date back to hundreds of years. They are cute, but not much more than that. So until the 1920s in Italy, we had a bourgeois architecture, the so-called Moresque architecture that still does exist around the Orta Lake in Latium, in Tuscany, that is extremely rich. So the person who asked this question in the chat really pointed out to this plague. So this fact, it does exist. Okay, so we have come to the conclusion of this first session. Now we're going to have a coffee break moment, and then we'll resume at 10:15 Turin time, Italian time, with the next session. Thanks a lot.